Welcome to episode 4 and the final episode of this module of this fitness foundation course for people over 40, where we are going to look and evaluate on how things are going for all the things that we've done, all the actions we've taken, all the planning we've done in the previous lessons. If you have not seen those lessons, do go back and have a look. But for now, let's just pass this on to Twain and he can drop us some nuggets.
Awesome stuff, man. So, where are we going with this? We are going to look at, again, scoot out of the way here. Number 4, right? Step 4, we are going to evaluate how it's going. We're going to do step 4 and step 5 in this one presentation, mainly because these two are, I guess, very similar steps to some degree, and they kind of follow on to each other. But yeah, first thing is when we are setting the goals, we already have started to take some action. We need to actually evaluate how things are going. And remember this, what doesn't get tracked doesn't progress. This is where a lot of people fall off because most people don't even know how to evaluate their progress, right? They do a very almost a simplistic way of looking at it where it's very outcome based. So a lot of times people look at weights, right? Many times I have clients that say, I start this diet. Oh, I immediately look at the weight. The next day, my weight's gone down. Yay, I'm successful. And then they get happy. But then the next day, the weight goes up. Oh no, I'm failed. And so that's not the way you track progress, right? So you have to learn how do you actually evaluate how it's going. And with the process of goal setting, again, behavior goals are where we need to focus on. So when you're evaluating your success, you actually want to track your consistency with the action and not the actual outcome, believe it or not. Because we don't chase the outcomes, we actually chase the process to allow the outcomes to come to us. The more you chase the outcome, you might be able to achieve the outcome in a short term period. But more often than not, what you'll find, and many of you have probably experienced, is that you end up being burned by it. There's a rebound to it. You lose the outcome very much in the long term. Okay, it's not sustainable. And the reason why is because you don't actually have the skill of maintaining the outcome because you never really built it up anyway while you're trying to achieve it. Because most people achieve outcomes through what? Through hacks, right? Most people achieve outcomes through quick fixes, things like this that don't actually work. They only show you some vanity metrics. Oh, your weight's going down, right? I do keto, I lose a bit of, I cut out my carbs, I drop a bit of water. Oh shit, wow, 2 kilos off in the first week, right? That's so motivating. I'm definitely going to see that progress continue. And then you just end up hitting a wall. And then you eat the regular food, boom, everything comes back. So how do you evaluate your success? Well, as I mentioned, focus on the consistency of your actions. You can do it in a variety of ways. If you're old school like me, you can write it down on the post-it, on the notebook. Or if you want to be a bit more high-tech, you can use a calendar app or even a habit tracking app as well. Okay, there are many on the market here. I don't have any to suggest at the moment. Most of my clients use my Fit for Life app to track their habits. So that's kind of how where we work on that. And there is a very definable benchmark for consistency. And the benchmark essentially is that you're 80% consistent with the action that you have decided. And this is actually quite easy to tabulate. Okay, so let's say you said you're going to eat 4 servings of protein in a day. That's your new goal that you are trying to aim towards, the process goal. And out of 7 days this week, 6 of the days you ate 4 servings of protein, one of the days you ate only 2 servings. So 6 divided by 7, hey, that's pretty good. That's more than 80%. They're solid. This habit is pretty consistent already. We can try to, decide what to do next, which I'll go through in the next step. But let's say, okay, you are not able to get the 4 servings of protein, you get only 2 servings out of the entire week. That's 2/7. That's definitely way below 80%. You probably have to rework at that a little bit more, or consider how are you going to adjust the behavior. So again, that will be further elaborated in the next steps process. One thing about evaluating your success is that it takes your emotion out of it in a way, or and that prevents you from reacting to and making poor decisions. Okay, there is a subjective element of data collection too that I'm going to go through in a second, but I think learning how to be objective with yourself and being honest with yourself is probably one of the most important skills to have, especially when you're evaluating your progress in anything that you're trying to pursue. And so it will also allow you to then also decide, should you add in something new or should you actually continue to work on the thing that you are trying to do? So subjective data is very important. Two, it's not just objective, like the number, it's not just a number, but you have to look at the subjective data. How do you actually feel about the new behavior you have been, practicing? How draining or difficult is it? because you do have to put in some effort to put in a new behavior, but it should feel manageable. You should feel like, hey, you know what? I feel confident I can keep this up. And if you're along those lines, then obviously this is something that you'll feel great, you know. So you want to definitely revisit this evaluation episode, you know, further down the line, maybe in a week or two after you have already put into action the previous lessons. Yeah. So make sure you come back to this. The important thing here I want to emphasize is you have to be flexible and you have to course correct as necessary. Again, you're committed into the macro long-term goal, but you have to be adaptable in the process, in the day-to-days. Okay, so let's move on quickly to the last step, which is determining what your next step is. Because after you've evaluated your progress, you have to decide what you need to do. And this is also where a lot of people fail. Yeah. This is oftentimes where we come in as coaches, helping people evaluate the progress and more importantly, determining what are the adjustments or the next steps they need to. Because we are third persons that are outside of them. And so we're not influenced too much by the being in the hot seat, if you will. And there's actually a Chinese proverb that says, I don't know what it translates to exactly. It's not funny if it translates exactly, but basically it's like the person on the side sees everything clearly. That's kind of what it translates to. And the idea here is that somebody that's objective, that's not you, is able to see the big picture in a very real way. And even more, it implies that us, when like we are not able to be very, very objective with ourselves. The reason why is because we are all human and we are not robots. So even coaches need coaches. I have a coach that helps me organize my training and tells me what to do for my sporting pursuits as well. Mainly because I know there's certain things and certain blind spots and shortfalls I have. So this is again why there's no shame really in seeking help in that sense. So the next step is this, right? The things that you're going to add on or the things you're going to adjust are not always linear. It's not as though you're going to say, oh, I'm going to add on the next, two habits straight away or something. You have to consider the evaluation process already. And after you've achieved consistency in the actual behavior, what are the options that you actually have? Because they're generally two, right? First one is you're going to stick with the same behavior, but you can increase the challenge. So we talk about this as achieving consistency before increasing intensity. Or you can go with the second option, which is I add in a completely new behavior. Maybe the current behavior that you are implementing has already achieved its maximum utility. It's already helped you achieve this next part of your journey. So you can then move on to the next thing. So that's if you have reached a consistency with it. But if you have not reached your consistency with the new goal, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Because sometimes people just give up here. They say, okay, the thing has failed. I might as well not do it. Okay, but you really have to go back in and face the failure and say, troubleshoot that process. Okay, what is the real issue? What's the things that's been holding me back? Is it circumstantial? What can I do to work around it? This is where you brainstorm certain solutions. Ultimately, it will come down to two things. Once you've gone through that process, you will either decide, maybe I should decrease the difficulty of the challenge that I've given myself. And there's no shame in that because you have to recognize that we all have limits. Okay, if I go into the gym as a newbie and I put 100 kilos on the bar, what's the chance I'm going to squat that? Like, probably not if I've never squatted before, right? I mean, I've seen some genetic freaks and people that are able to do that, sure. But let's say the normal person, right? The average person. So it's okay to decrease the weight down and say, hey, maybe let's just squat the bar first, The other thing is that if you have actually been struggling at this behavior for longer than about 4 weeks, that will be the threshold point. Usually in the coaching process, we're able to diagnose that a little bit earlier. So maybe even at the 2-week mark, you might say, hey, you know what, this doesn't seem like it'll be a good idea for you to do. Let's then choose a new behavior. Yeah. So these are generally the options that you would go through in terms of the next steps. So that pretty much rounds it out. These are the 5 steps to goal setting. Make sure you watch each of the lessons. You want to define the outcome-based goal. You want to find that deep motivation that's going to power you through the tough periods. You want to establish the behavior-based goals, which are basically the things that you need to do on the daily to work towards the goal itself. Then there's the taking action process where we have all these implementation intentions and the strategies to help you get the actions done. And then there's the evaluation process, which a lot of people forget about, where we need to track our progress to see how we are doing, so that we can then go to the 5th step, which is to determine the next step. So Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is all quite, how should we say, definitive and comprehensive in with regards to how to actually get through it. I will say is like one thing that has helped with me with regards to the weight tracking is that you average it out. So what do I mean by that? That means that last time when I first started, I would track my weight every day, right? Then you see, like as you say, all the fluctuations that you get. So I was like, oh, okay, this is not very accurate for me because you have to allow for these fluctuations. So I started doing it weekly, and then every week that I'll get, okay, every Monday. So every Monday, this is the weight that I have. And then I found like this is also not very accurate. We have to see what else. So I went back to actually tracking every day, but what I did is every 7 days I average out. So Monday to Sunday, I track all of those weights, and then I give my average for that week. And then that's the weight for that week, rather than okay, what was I on Monday morning, and then what am I next Monday? And I
Yep.
found that was quite useful because then you start to see as you go forward, um, that you allow for those fluctuations in your lifestyle because there are some days that maybe you go eat out with friends. There are some days that you maybe stayed home. Those rainy days, so you didn't get much exercise in. All these kind of things come and play a part. Maybe you ate a lot of carbs, so you're carrying excess water, and all these kinds of things. And so that
Yep.
allowed for that fluctuation. So I quite like how you put that there. Is that when we go through it, is you know you also added in that how do you feel and be flexible. These kind of aspects is because it can be a very demotivating factor as well, is if you're putting in the hard work but you're not seeing the results. And actually, the results are there. It's just that they're not there on a daily basis. They're not being compounded on a daily basis, but they are being compounded on a weekly basis, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Um, and then the other part is that I like how you also put that with success. Success is not doing it all at 100% of the time, but if you're reaching 80% of the time, that's considered success already. So for somebody who enjoys to eat some ice cream at the end of the day, that's always a great thing to hear because, and we've had this conversation, I think, during one of our podcasts, is
Yeah.
that as long as you hit your protein throughout the day, that's one of the major metrics. And you've counted in for your other calories within your other meals to leave yourself that leeway. There's no reason why you can't enjoy your ice cream if that's going to help you to relax and
Yep.
to cope with stress. I don't want to use that as like a, what are they called? Not binge eating, but what is it? What's the term for it? Where you're using food as
Because
a
we're
coping
kind of
mechanism. So
business.
we're not doing that, but there is that element of de-stress when you just sit down and it's like your frame of mind just gets to that point. It's like having my ice cream, so I'm closing off for the day.
I mean, I think just on that note there, the difference is really in intention, right? You can use food has a social element and a
Mm.
psychological element to it as much as it has a nutritional element to it, right? And so all these things are kind of intertwined, but understanding the intention behind why you're indulging is super important. So the goal with that is you have planned it out such that you can indulge as part of your plan. And with that purpose of not just, hey, I'm not just eating this thing just for the sake of it, but it's really that it is helping me in this way. Okay. And it's not that you're using it as a crutch also, because that will be different where you're it's like a reactionary thing where you're saying, oh, I'm really stressed out. I need to eat this thing to calm me down. This is more complementary. It's a supplementary to your enjoyment of the entire experience. It's only one small factor versus if you're going into it saying, I got to eat this whole pint of ice cream because it's making me feel good right now so that I can calm myself down. That is the experience in and of itself. That's the only factor we are looking at. And so that's a very, very, very big difference there. Even though subtly it looks, you know, like there's not much going on in that sense from the surface level.
All right, awesome. I think we'll call it to close there for this module. Then people can join us for the next module where we'll be touching in on the nutrition basics. So we'll catch you then in the next video.
See you guys.